Everyone's sharpening journey is different. It can be a long and winding road, and it can be filled with frustration, excitement, happiness, and despair. My sharpening journey was no different, and today I wanted to touch on a little bit about how I came to understand the importance, or lack thereof, of the different grits of stones we're using when we're sharpening our knife. When I first learned to sharpen a knife, I was taught on a 1000 grit stone that looked like a half pipe. So I wasn't really taught by the most knowledgeable sharpeners in the world. So I really had to go out of my way to watch a lot of YouTube videos and do a lot of experimentation to figure out what worked best for me. When I first started learning to sharpen, I thought that going up to a higher grit stone was going to solve all of my problems. Coming off of, say, a 1000 grit stone, my knife would feel good, but not great. And I thought that going up to a higher grit stone, again, would help me get my knife to a sharpness that I was really happy with. This was not the case, and at that time I really didn't have a good understanding of how the burr should feel, how to form it properly, how to deburr, and how to use the best technique possible on the 1000 grit stone before moving on to those higher grit stones. So in today's video, the point we're going to try to make and try to illustrate to you, and also sort of test out our theory, is that a higher grit stone isn't necessarily necessary. Higher grit stones aren't always necessary, and learning to use your stone properly with good technique is going to get you better results than trying to go up to a higher grit stone. We're going to put some knives through a couple of tests here. We've had both of these sharpened up to a 1000 grit. We're going to test their sharpness on our sharp testing machine here, and then we're going to put them through some practical sharpness tests, cutting up some vegetables, give you sort of some thoughts on how the edges are feeling, and then we're going to sharpen them up to an 8000 grit stone and see how the edges perform any better or worse, or just kind of what changes going up to that 8000 grit stone. And hopefully this will be an eye-opening experience for you. So stay tuned. All right, guys, so we're ready to do our first test, which is going to be using our sharpness testing machine here. It is a scale with a little device on top with a thread in it. I am going to put my knife in a tip right here, and I'm going to gently push the knife down into the thread. And depending on how much pressure it takes to cut that thread, will give us an understanding of how sharp the edge is. So without further ado, let's get into our first knife here, the Moritaka 240mm Gyuto. Here we go. Okay, so it took 249 grams of pressure to push through that thread, which I don't think is a awesome score, but it's certainly not a terrible score either. So I'll get set up and we'll try test out our next knife. If I were to just pick this up and feel it with my fingers, like, it feels really sharp. I think are we shaving? Yeah, like you're shaving with this bad boy. So it's definitely sharp. Okay, second knife is a Sakon Ginga Nakiri. Here we go. A 152 grams of pressure to get through with this guy, which is actually, yeah, now that I feel the edge, it definitely does feel a little bit sharper. Yeah, we're shaving with this bad boy too. So, yeah, definitely very interesting. It's interesting to see that that this guy could come in almost 100 grams more pressure is needed to go through that thread, but we're still shaving arm hairs with both of them. So they're both very, very sharp off of the 1K and a little leather strop. Let's see how they perform on some vegetables. Okay, we're set up for our veg test. So we've got tomato, bell pepper, two ingredients that I find do a really good job of showing just how sharp the edge of a knife really is. They don't really tell you much about the edge geometry, but that's not really the point of today's video. Today's video is all about the cutting edge. So we'll do some testing on these guys and just see how they're performing. And then we'll have a good understanding of how different things are when we go up to the higher grit. So like I said, this guy's pretty frickin' sharp. It feels fantastic. It feels very smooth. I'm able to get very, very thin slices of this tomato. I'm not getting cut, hung up at any point as I'm coming through. Feels really good. Like, this is an awesome edge. Very sharp. I'm not sort of like, I'm not, even when I'm cutting sort of the more curvy part of this tomato here, I'm not sliding off of the skin at all. I'm going right through, no problem. Bell pepper, no pressure down whatsoever. We're going through no problem. Look at that. Sweet. That feels fantastic. So no pressure down whatsoever right now. I'm just moving the knife forward and backwards. And we're going through no problem. Yeah, feels fantastic. I really don't have anything negative to say about this edge. It feels really good. But yeah, I guess we'll see how things change when we go up to the 8,000 grit stone. All right, testing out our Sakon Ginga Nakiri. This guy is apparently sharper according to our sharp testing machine. So let's see how that translates into actual use. Very sharp. It's getting started into the ingredient really, really easily. I can't really say that I notice a tremendous difference though, to be honest with you. This guy's a little thicker behind the edge too. So again, we're trying not to like talk too much about edge geometry here, because that's like a whole different topic. But it's hard to not include some thoughts on edge geometry because it really does make a big difference. But yeah, cutting against like the curved surface of the tomato skin, no problem. Going through super easy. Feels really nice. Again, I wouldn't say I'm noticing a tremendous difference between this guy and the Moritaka, but according to our sharpness tester, this guy required 100 grams less pressure, which I feel like is pretty substantial. I don't really know though. Should make a huge difference. Yeah, feels fantastic. I really don't know what else to say here. Both knives felt really good. I can't really say if I didn't have that sharpness test before, I wouldn't be able to tell you which knife I felt like was sharper. They both felt really, really nice. Of course, there are some other variables in here, like the Nakiri being shorter. I've got slightly less blade to work with, so that'll make a slight difference. But I guess that kind of furthers our point, which is that the edge that you put on your knife and the grit that you use to achieve that edge don't always matter as much as you might think. Using proper technique with a 1000 grit stone and then hitting it on a leather strop is going to get you awesome results. You should be able to, as you saw, be able to shave your arm hairs with your knife, which is going to translate into really nice cutting feel when you're cutting vegetables, even those with more delicate skins on them. I'm interested to go up to the 8000 grit now, because sometimes what can happen is your edge can get a little bit too smooth almost, and especially when we're working with like bell peppers and tomatoes and stuff like that, sometimes they can kind of like slide off of the skins a little bit. So we'll see what happens when we bring these both up to the 8000 grit stone. All right, we're back, guys. We just touched both of these guys up on an 8000 grit stone, or up to an 8000 grit stone, and we're going to test them out again on our sharpness test machine, and then we're going to go into some veg tests. So Moritaka 8000 grit edge on the sharp test machine. 111. So that's down.
256.
Yeah, so down 140 points there. So that's pretty substantial difference. 8000 grit edge on our Sakon Ginga Nakiri. Here we go. $131. So that's only 20 points better on this guy.
So not a huge difference.
Not a huge difference. But let's see what that means for chopping up some veg here. All right, folks, here we go. The 8,000 grit edge on some vegetables here. Let's see what a difference this makes. Get a little, not enough suction. So first thoughts. I am definitely noticing noticing a difference here. I'm entering into the skin easier. Yeah, you definitely notice a difference. I'm not skating off the edge or off of the skin of the tomato at all. Yeah, so the edge feels really, really nice. Is it a huge difference? It's not a tremendous difference, no, but it definitely is noticeable. But I guess this does kind of prove our point in that with proper technique, you should be able to get your knife very sharp off of a 1000 grit. And before you start worrying about getting all sorts of different grits of stone, before you can get a really good edge off of your 1000 grit, you're not really going to make any difference to your knife's edge. The technique that you use and your ability to get a good edge off of a 1000 grit stone is super important. Same thing I tell people that come in for our sharpening class. Even off a 320 grit stone, you should still be able to get your knife very sharp. It should feel sharp, but the edge isn't going to be awesome. It's going to feel kind of serrated, a little bit toothy almost. So not to the same degree on the 1000 grit as on the 320, of course. Your edge is certainly not going to feel toothy off of a 1000. But going from using your 1000 grit improperly and then going up to a 6000 or 8000 isn't really going to make any difference. Yeah, and this feels really nice. And I definitely am noticing a difference. So it's not to say that it's not worth it going up to the higher grits, but it really is important that you just use good technique before you start screwing around with other grits. Something that we thought was going to be really fun to do, and we're going to start a YouTube series for it coming up very soon here, is testing out a bunch of different steel types against a bunch of different grits and see how they perform in terms of overall sharpness and edge retention. So in an upcoming video, we're going to pick a steel type. We're going to try to take as many variables out of it as we possibly can. So we're going to use like 5 of the exact same knife. We're going to sharpen them all to different grits, and then we're going to test them all on the sharp tester machine here, and then we're going to chop like a whole bag of carrots with each knife, and then see what they rate on the sharpness tester again, depending on what grit we initially put on it. So I hope that sounds fun to you guys. We're really excited to do it. I think it's really going to tell us a lot about what steels pair best with which grits, and it'll be interesting to see what grit is best for which for each type of steel. So we're excited to do that. Before I get too ahead of myself here, we still have one more knife to test here. Oh, there we go. Oh, yeah, that does feel very nice. Not gonna lie. Yeah, really nice. Feeling really good. Not falling off the curvy part of the skin there. That feels nice. That definitely feels nice. That feels very, very good. I'm a little bit surprised. Usually, like, I am and I'm not at the same time. I really like the edge that you get off of a 1000, and typically, like, I am noticing better performance with this higher grit stone here, this 8000. So maybe that 8000 grit stone we use is just really nice for this particular application, like going through skins and stuff like that. But oftentimes I feel like the edge I get off of a 1000 grit is better for this sort of thing. But I feel like I'm kind of changing my tune here a little bit, because this feels really, really nice. Again, it's not a huge difference, but it definitely is noticeable. And in our next YouTube series where we test out the different grits for the different steel types, it'll be interesting to see how these different grits translate into edge retention as well. Because I find sometimes, and maybe I'll be wrong here, we'll figure that out with our testing, that the higher grit stones lose their sharpness a little bit quicker. But that will be for a later video. So yeah, make sure you stay tuned for that. I hope you enjoyed this video. Some interesting results here. We're excited to keep testing out different stones and steels and see how it translates into sharpness and edge retention. So if you have any feedback for us and ways you think we can improve our tests, making them more accurate, leave a comment down below. Like this video if you enjoyed our content. Subscribe to our channel for more knife-related content. And until the next one, stay sharp.